I never forget a face, speak up. I never forget any face.
Leave me alone, brother. I've never seen you before.
This is the poisonous young swine that near done me in. Him and his friends, they beat me and kicked me and hugged me. Stop him, stop him. They laughed at me blood and me moans. This murderous law.
Then there was like a sea of dirty, smelly old men trying to get at your humble narrator with their feeble rukers and horny old claws. It was old age having a go at youth. And I daren't do a single solitary thing, oh my brothers. It being better to be hit at like that than want to sit and feel that horrible pain.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a podcast Orange. I am your host, Jack Siegel, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Tom Crescenzo. He, him. Hello, Tom.
How's it going, Two-Spirit?
It is going well. I thought I should address you and address you by your pronouns.
Yeah, I identify as a Two-Spirit cross between werewolf, leprechaun, and I'm just going to throw in a third one here. Successful comedian, because that's the most important one to me. Those are my genders: werewolf, leprechaun, successful comedian. All three of them, and the pronoun is still he, so you don't have to change anything.
I like how genders have become like a World of Warcraft thing.
Yeah, right. There's like a lot of different classes.
Yeah, and you just choose whatever character you want to be. But little did you guys...
sorry to interrupt, but have you ever, like, you know when people are playing like World of Warcraft and like two friends sign on, they pick the same character, and it's like, oh, dude, you can't be the same one as me, switch. Like, I just wonder if anybody's ever chosen the same, like, three-gender, two-spirit combination and be like, oh, bro, I'm the Red Fox Owl Hawk. You can't be Red Fox Owl Hawk too. You gotta choose new genders, man.
I relate to that more with Super Smash Brothers.
That too, definitely that
people
too.
Are like, you can't play as Zelda. I was gonna be Zelda. Like
Zelda, it's like you can't play as the one trans character. I'm an actual trans person.
Yeah, that's true. Zelda was kind of like a trans character.
Well, she's not like trans. Yeah, she would change into Sheik. Which I never understood.
Nobody played as Zelda. You would start as Zelda, and then you change to Sheik, because Sheik would kick ass. Whereas
and then in Super Smash 4, Nintendo split them apart into two characters because according to Nintendo, there's only two genders. But
Nintendo's very backwards, is what we're saying.
Yeah, Nintendo is regressive. But I mean, kind of like it's weird. Like, you know, you have Zero Suit Samus. It's like. She's got like weapons and shit, and she's badass, but she's dressed in like a skin tight spandex suit with huge tits and a fat ass, and heels. She has heels. It's like, why does she have heels? Like, how could that possibly be helping?
Samus. That was a weird thing I didn't know, but there would be like games online where you could undress Samus. I didn't even know that was a girl until like I was like 15.
You ever gone to DeviantArt?
Yeah, people are fucking pervs, man.
DeviantArt is just disgusting. But regardless,
little do you guys know, by the way, that you guys can't see us, but both me and Tom are wearing blackface right now in our pod.
I will not co-sign that. I do not know what Jack is wearing, but I can safely and very happily, by the way, confirm that I am not, nor would I ever wear blackface. I'm sitting in my room right now with a glass of water, comfortably wearing Indian face.
Okay.
Because I'm not a fucking racist, Jack.
I thought you were just going to make me do this bit on my own, but...
No, I mean, no, because we can't both be in blackface. It's just like the genders in the fucking World of Warcraft. Yeah. We can't both do the same racist skit.
We have to choose one race that we're offending.
Yeah, that's why I chose Indians, because most of them have more money than me, at least here. So
yeah, that's true.
No, I'm not trying to offend Indians. I just like their food. Anyway,
it gives me stomach aches. I do like it, but it gives me diarrhea, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does. Like all.
What's with blackface, man? Why is this the new thing that everyone's talking about?
I mean, blackface is black. What's the deal with blackface? Their faces aren't really black. So what's the deal?
What is the deal, Jerry? Why don't you fucking tell us and stop asking us?
If I were wearing blackface, I'd say I was black as night. Crowd just goes wild.
Woohoo! That's amazing.
You ever have a black face? You ever lose your black socks?
You can always have one sock that's black and one sock that's white, and you're like integrating the socks.
And if you wear them at the same time, it's interracial socks.
That's gonna be on his new special. I can't wait.
Yeah, can't wait for Jerry's next hour. Here's what I've gathered. Blackface has been around for a while, and it's always been pretty bad. But now people are kind of realizing how bad it actually is. Like, I mean, and it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, my sense of humor was pretty racist in high school. I've since changed, but yeah, in high school, my sense of humor. I grew up in Comac, Long Island. What do you want from me? But yeah, my sense of humor was definitely pretty. It was definitely pretty racist back then. Even back then, if you asked me to like do like a joke where I like or a senior prank or something where I wore blackface to the school, I would be like, dude, fuck that. Like, that's hell
Everyone
no.
would just
like,
look at you like, what the fuck? Did you ever see that video of like this mom and her kid, and her kid's like 13 years old, and he was like, for Black History Month, I want to come as Martin Luther King, and it's like this 13-year-old kid wearing blackface.
See, that was the first real blackface scandal. That was like OG blackface. It was crazy because that wasn't even a celebrity. That was just like a viral. It was just a viral story about some little kid whose parents are literally retarded. Like, the kid obviously can't be blamed for that. All that tells me is that his parents are retarded and probably racist too.
That they let him. I used to have a bit that I would tell on stage back in the old days when I was allowed out of my house about how blackface is a little bit more racist just because it takes so much effort. Like, there's like at least like 20 minutes in front of the mirror with a paintbrush, just like painting yourself. Like, that takes a lot of time to do, you know? It's not just, and you're
especially if you do the really racist, like, big red lips too.
Yeah, that's a lot of
like
shit.
At that point, you're like putting lipstick on for the sake of this. It's like, you gotta be racist.
And it's also like that's gotta be uncomfortable. Wearing face paint like that all day, like that would bother the shit out of me, having like OCD. I would just.
I mean, you would be fine with it because you'd be getting off on the racism, so you wouldn't care.
True.
But
big racist boner.
I will say, like, like the fact that Jimmy Fallon wore blackface or whatever, like, I do blame him, but I don't blame him entirely because there was a whole entire like we said in a couple episodes ago, there's a whole entire network of executives and writers that gave it the green light too. And that's kind of like with this whole thing about like, who gets to voice black characters in TV shows, or like who gets to, like, I understand that like black actors should be the only one playing black people in physical like shows, but like, is it the same for voice acting?
I don't think so. And I think because I mean, the thing is, and like, obviously some of you might roll your eyes because we are, surprise, surprise, if you couldn't tell by our voices, we are white people.
Well, I'm Italian, so
sure, you are closer to black. But before we get into that, I just want to say, because we're on the time, I don't understand why they're deleting episodes of TV shows from Netflix and Hulu and all these streaming services, because they had characters with blackface. Because like I was watching, like I saw that they deleted an episode of The Office where it was like in season 9, and Dwight invites the whole office to Schrute Farms, and like for Halloween, for like a traditional Halloween, and then there Mose, his cousin, is wearing blackface, and everyone's like freaked out by that, and that was hilarious because it was just showing like these people are so out of touch and weird, and it's, they're not like making fun of black people, they're making fun of people that wear blackface. It's like they're agreeing with you. It's not. I don't know. This whole thing just seems reactionary.
this all kind of goes back to the whole like slippery slope of satire type of thing, where it's like, you know, sometimes that's very like in that instance, yeah, like what they were doing was a satirical representation of that type of American who truly is ignorant enough to think blackface is okay.
Yeah.
But like, there's obviously there's instances where like content is made and it's actually like racist or like
Oh,
actually fucked up, and people are like, bro, it's satire, you just got to read between the lines, it's irony. It's like, dude, it's probably not irony. Like, I think you said the n-word like 5 times. Yeah,
like Milo
you know what I mean? Like,
Yiannopoulos will claim that he's like, I'm being satirical when I say I hate black people. It's like, no, you aren't. Like,
yeah,
that's
it's like
not.
that's not a satirical take. Like, South Park is arguably the greatest satire, like anything of all time. There's never once been an episode where the whole thing was just like, yeah, we hate Mexicans. Like,
Well,
that's
yeah,
not satire. Like, you're not really satirizing anything by just acting racist. It's like, we all know what racism sounds like. You don't need to act racist to satirize it.
well,
But
South
you
Park is
should, if
actually
you're
like a
showing it, if you're showing it from the perspective of your main characters who are not racist, that's different.
yeah. Well, it's also like South Park is actually a great example. Good job, Tom, because
Oh, thank you.
South Park in all of every type of ethnicity that they have on each of their episodes, they do this very, very over the top stereotypical accent to portray them, whether it's black, Mexican, Asian, Indian, Jewish, whatever. They do this very, very over the top stereotype, and it's sort of like making fun of those stereotypes. It's making fun of like that's the way that like average bumblefuck Americans view these people as
Yeah.
just like these stereotypes, and it's like people just don't. That's that layer of like juicy nuance that I appreciate about that show. And Family Guy does the same thing, and
I
it's
think
like that,
Family Guy is not as good at it, but
no, it's
like
not as no,
they're
definitely not
good
as
at it
good.
too. I
But The
think like with
Simpsons is as good as at that
The
as
Simpsons is amazing at it. And
The
I think
Simpsons.
what made me so upset about the whole Apu thing is like, and to be fair, I didn't watch the whole documentary about the
I didn't
problem
watch
with
any of
Apu,
it, so I don't really
but
fucking care.
like what makes me like, I can see how the voice of Apu sounds pretty racist and probably makes you upset as an Indian person. But Apu was a real ass character. Like, he
Yeah.
wasn't just a stereotype. There was episodes like just pretty much just about him. Like, it's
Well,
not
also,
like they just shelved him like he was just like, here's the ethnic guy. It's like, no, they respected him as a character, at least somewhat. And
well,
I think
Apu
that
was
like,
also a good guy. He was he he was like a really intelligent, dedicated, loving family man as a character. He was like a morally upright citizen, and the commentary that I think always thought The Simpsons was trying to portray was that these immigrants, even though they're really, if they come to this country and they're really smart and really like decent people, they still have to get like shit jobs working at convenience stores, and that's like the fucked up way that our country operates. And it's like you're not understanding the whole point of this character was supposed to be
yeah.
like a really decent individual.
And the
And
argument that someone would make is like, well, why couldn't they have just found an Indian guy? And like, maybe, like, it was the fucking 90s. Maybe they just didn't find one. Like, you got like,
yeah,
here's the thing. Like, yeah, it sucks that they didn't have an Indian guy doing it, I guess. But can you really blame them for not being able to find an Indian voice actor in like 1990? I mean,
1989 is
it,
when the
it,
show started. It was
yeah,
originally
like
the
if it
Carol
came
Burnett
out,
show in the mid 80s.
like if it
Not the
came out
Carol Burnett, the
now,
Tracy Ullman show.
like if a show came out now and they had an Indian character and he was being voiced by like Ryan Reynolds, then I'd be like, yeah, that's pretty fucking racist. Maybe take that off TV. But
Well,
it
the guy
was
who
like,
voiced him,
and I'm not saying the time makes it better, but the time does make it somewhat more excusable that they couldn't necessarily find an Indian person.
yeah,
Granted, I don't know if they really tried, but I'm assuming even if they did, they may not have found one. Like, so, sometimes you work with the actors who you have available to you. And so, voice actors have a talent, their talent is changing their voice in that for most of history that included ethnically, like they could they could do ethnic voices. And that's it's controversial because it's like part of it is like, well, then if you can't do the voice of an ethnic person unless you are that ethnicity and have had those experiences, well, then why should you be able to do the voice of a doctor if you have never been a doctor and don't know what that's like?
Well, also
Or
the
like, why
voice
should
actor
you?
who played Apu was Hank Azaria, and Hank Azaria. The thing about The Simpsons was him and Harry Shearer and a couple of other actors. They didn't only voice one character; they voiced like 15 different characters on the show. I watched this interview with Hank Azaria once, um, and they were like he was just going through all of the voices, and it was kind of like amazing to watch. I'm not gonna lie, I was really impressed just on like how quickly it's like he's Apu, now he's Mose, now he's Chief Wiggum, now he's and it's like just the way that they're able to go through all of those different
Yeah,
characters. I was astounded by that, and that's his craft as a voice actor. He didn't mean like I mean, so I don't think in a way by saying like
I
you
think
can't
I
voice this
think
character, you're saying like this person now has to have limitations as to what voices he can do, and I don't think that's really fair to voice actors.
I mean, yeah, it's just kind of like again. I mean, I get it. Maybe he could have made his Indian voice a little less. Thank you, come again. Like maybe, like
But then he wouldn't
sure,
have sounded
you could
like a
dock him for
fucking
that. I just personally think that the character Apu truly and genuinely is not a very like. Maybe he's somewhat stereotypical, but I don't think he's that harmful of a stereotype. He's like, if anything, Cleveland from Family Guy is much worse, and people don't seem to have a problem with Cleveland. I never really understood that. Like,
well. Does anyone
Cleveland
really
is
have a
literally
problem?
just like I don't think anyone has like a huge problem. But
I
like
don't
if you're
think
gonna
so.
get mad, like if you're gonna get mad, like I don't see why people attack Apu. I'll
See, the
say
thing is,
this.
I think people, if you're offended by this, I think we need receipts as to who is offended. I need to know who these people are because I just say people are angry about. Well, who are these people? I've never heard it, and I'm not saying they don't exist, but I don't know who these people are. They're
I
never
mean it's
out there.
yeah. I like if we ask someone like like if we ask somebody we know who's Indian, maybe they might say like, yeah, I actually do have a problem with Apu's voice, but
Fair enough, but I
I
don't
and
know any people
I mean,
like
yeah,
that.
I haven't, anecdotally, I haven't met any, and I've done some research, and it seems like most people who are mad about stuff like this are just woke white people on Twitter, and that's an opinion. That's a section of opinions that I care about like negative 50%. Like,
Yeah, and
I
those
literally have
people are like
zero.
respect for those people. Yeah, those people suck. And like that's the thing is they don't aren't really offended by that. They just want it. It's just like the idea of it's just being trendy. It's just like it's
It's an
cool to
attention
act
grab. Like
offended. Yeah, it's cool, and they
people want
think
to
like
get
black
attention.
people will respect them if we act offended by this shit. Like, oh, they'll think we're
And there
cool.
are it's not just woke white. Like there's plenty of really, there's definitely plenty of super like left wing people of who are black or like Hispanic or of any other ethnicity who get offended by stuff like this. But by and large, it's mostly just woke white people trying to impress all their asshole friends from the city so that they have like the teeniest possible chance that one of the fucking women in the squad might want to bang them, even
No,
though that's probably not going to happen. And they're just going to help them move apartments again and get like they're all just going to eat like ramen afterwards and go home. And
meanwhile, all their women are gonna fuck guys like us that hate those woke white people.
yeah, exactly.
Like they're just
All
gonna fuck.
right. Now
Um,
that's wishful. Now that is wishful thinking, Jack.
that's true. We're still just we don't get fucked.
No, we do not know. But anyway,
That's besides
one
the
thing
point.
I'll
Let's not talk about that.
say that's a little bit of a different discussion. We don't have to have that on the podcast ever. Okay, moving on.
Save that for therapy.
Yeah, save that for Dr. Shields or something. I'm just like sitting in a chair. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I literally haven't felt the warmth of a woman in 10 years. And you're just like, Tom, we're recording right now. And I'm like, oh, I'm not in the office. It's not the doctor's. Oh shit. Fuck.
Shit.
Sorry.
And your
My
therapist,
bad.
meanwhile, is like, I'm not a therapist. I'm your dentist. And it's like, oh, okay.
He's like, I'm not a therapist, and this is not a doctor's office, and you have yet to pay for these fucking groceries, you asshole. Like,
And people behind you are like, yeah,
came,
I feel you, man. I'm really sorry.
and you came in the store without your mask, sir. So please hurry the fuck up.
Leave you.
Like, I'm sorry.
You weird,
Sorry,
sexually frustrated man.
But I'll say this. I will say that in the instance where shows have like I don't know if there's that many shows from like the past 20 years that have episodes that are really so offensive that they actually merit being like completely erased from memory.
Even if
There's
it is
definitely
offensive, it
old.
shouldn't be erased from memory. It's the whole
I
point.
mean, yeah,
Who
it
gives a
shouldn't be
fuck?
erased from memory. I could see you not wanting to put it on like TV, but like, yeah, no, you should be able to like this. All this shit is sadly part of like whether we like it or not is part of the history of America. Like, we have to be honest about all of American history, even the ugliest parts of it.
Yeah.
Because if you start burning books, it's just I mean, like I hate to use the
Slippery
slippery
slope.
slope argument, but it is. It's just like you once you start getting in the habit of censoring information seen as dangerous just because it's dangerous, like you're headed down a path where you're allowing a class of elites to decide the information that you view or like what it is that you can and can't say and read.
Also, it's like but this idea of like is that there's no sort of like gray area or nuance or anything. It's almost like fascism of like anything we think is even remotely can be seen as offensive, we're gonna view it. And it's like, listen, if you don't want to watch this episode of this TV show because you think it's like, you can do whatever you want. Nobody's putting a gun to your head and saying you have to watch this episode of The Office right now. You could just choose not to watch it, but like they got rid of this episode of Community where they play Dungeons and Dragons, and in the episode, Senor Chang, Ken Jeong's character, chooses to play as an elf, and he's like a black elf, and the other characters see it as this guy's wearing blackface, and they get like really offended by it, especially the character Britta, who's like this very woke, blonde-haired liberal lady, and she's like, you're you're wearing blackface, and in the whole episode they're like commenting on people's overreaction to certain things and interpreting things as being offensive when in reality they don't have that they don't have those intentions, and not everything has to be seen as racial. And so it's like they're making fun of the same people that are taking the episode down, but you guys are so dense you're not understanding the very irony of that. And it just seems like it's like, look, there's a slippery slope, like you said, because it's like, well, now we're not going to allow certain movies on this website, and it's like because things are seen as problematic. I saw there was an
I mean,
article the
some
other
things
day.
are you got to remember like some things are seen as problematic when other things that could be just as problematic don't get any blowback. Like, okay, we have to take down all the TV shows and all the movies and all the episodes that have ever had blackface or have ever had a character who's like an ethnic person voiced by a white guy or have ever had anything relatively racial offensive. But you could still watch like you could still watch like movies like The Joker where like half of it is just people getting shot, or you could still watch the Saw movies where literally the point of the movie is you're watching torture happen and you don't even identify with the characters. You're actually just watching people get tortured for the sake of it.
And
It's
also,
like
it's
if that's
always like an
okay,
old man.
like
All the Saw movies are like it's an old white man who's torturing and murdering. Pretty much in most of the movies, it's like just people of color. Like
it's like
that's
young. It's a lot of young. It's a lot of young women too.
it's a lot of
It's
young
like
women
if that's
being
okay.
tortured
Like
and murdered by an old man. Like,
if I could watch that, like if I could watch Saw and watch people get tortured to death for fun, or if like you could go watch fucking like who knows any movie that involves like guns or explosions or death. Like why is death seen as such free range in entertainment, but like racial stuff is seen as
yeah,
so taboo? Like
I mean, it's
death
the
is
thing. It's
just
like
as traumatizing. Death is just as traumatizing and damaging and overall potentially hurtful as any racial issue. So I don't understand why certain things take priority over others when it comes to like what gets canceled and what doesn't.
well, also it's like certain movies. I saw this bullshit article the other day, and I was like, I want to punch the fucking author in the face. He's like, because now that we're taking Gone with the Wind down from HBO Max, which by the way, I fucking hate Gone with the Wind. I think it's a
Yeah, that
terrible
movie
movie.
sucks balls.
And
That
it's not even
movie's
just because of the racism, it's just corny and stupid, and the acting is
it's just a
terrible.
terrible
And
it's
it's
just a
just a terrible
terrible
movie.
long just a long, drawn out, boring ass
A
old
horrible
film. But that's
fucking
not
movie.
the point.
And I love old movies. Like I honestly prefer old movies most of the time. But Gone with the Wind does not hold up. And it's like but it's like okay, so you don't like that movie because it's racist. So he's like, so here are 10 other movies that we think are problematic. And it's like, dude, you can go through every single not every piece of medium is going to be as woke and liberal as you are. That doesn't mean they're not good. There are plenty of things that are like you could see today that are like what's very outdated and might even be seen as like racially offensive. But does that diminish the quality? I don't
I
think
mean,
it
forget
should. I don't think
racism. Like, have you ever
I don't
heard
think
of?
art has
Have you?
to agree with you in order for you to find it good. That's not the point of art. You're
I
not
mean, but
supposed to
have you
agree with
ever heard of like? It's not just racism. Have you ever heard of like that feminism test for movies? It's like a test that like determines like whether or not a movie passes like the postmodernist like
oh my
is it like
god.
acceptable to watch this and it's something like if it has to have like at least like 5 scenes where two women are talking about something that has nothing to do with men. It has to have at least one main character who is a woman who has nothing to do with a man. It has to have like first like not even it
Fuck.
like even if you could try to implement this fucking rule and actually make a film, it's like not every story is like that. Like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
there's an overwhelming amount of stories that are just about guys doing guy shit and the women are not really involved. Sure, that's fucked up. But why do we have to erase those movies instead of you making new movies? Like if the art is
Exactly.
so if you're so passionate about the fucking art, make those movies. Make those movies who pass your test. Have them be successful. Fucking actually
Yeah.
write and like direct it and fucking
That's
get
what
it
Jordan
together and
Peele's doing.
try to get it public. Like
Well, I mean, like
why are you putting the burden on all of us to stop watching movies that we love just because they don't match your cunty standard? Like
you
I
can
gotta find
always
that.
watch a movie. Like a movie doesn't. People are like, is it acceptable to watch? It's acceptable to watch anything. You don't have to say that. Listen, a movie can would take The Silence of the Lambs. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and people say like, well, it has a lot of homophobic and transphobic thing because Buffalo Bill is like this monster who's a transgender. It's like who gives a shit? That's not the point. The point
And
is a
also
great movie.
you could analyze things anyway. Like if you
Yeah,
want to flip
exactly.
it to where
Doesn't
if
mean
you
you're
want to
right.
flip it because if you want to flip the Silence of the Lambs to where it's transphobic, I could flip it the other way. Maybe the reason Buffalo Bill feels like he needs to kill is because he feels like he's never been right in his identity. So the movie fucking agrees with you, retard. Like
It's arrogant to assume that your analysis is the correct analysis. There's no such thing as a correct analysis because film is an art form and art form can be interpreted any way you want it to be. There's no right or wrong. Like this means that and that means that. And it's like if you sanitize everything, it's going to be boring. The best movies of all time are very, very controversial and fucked up, and are not well like. And also, cultures evolve over time. There's not going to be like yes, the way we think today is not the same as the way we thought in 1961. So having Mickey Rooney play like a very stereotypical Chinese person in
yeah,
Breakfast at Tiffany's is going to be seen as racially offensive. Does that mean the movie is shit? No. But it's a great movie, and it's the fact that we don't have not everything has to be like you don't have to sit there with your arms and your legs crossed over your mangina
here
and like bitch on
I will
Twitter
give
because of that.
I will give some pushback and like I'll try to think of a movie that I wouldn't watch because of like racial implications because they definitely do exist. I'm not saying they don't
Oh yeah.
exist. Like
Or like
there's
The Passion of the Christ
like
is
you know
definitely
that
like a fucked up
well,
movie.
well there's that movie. That movie's like very pretty much obviously like against Jews. But like I mean
Yeah.
either way like you like you know you have movies like I don't know like I'm
Birth
trying
of a
to
Nation. The
well, yeah,
Birth of
well,
a Nation.
Birth of a Nation is an interesting story because I had a college class history of film, and my professor was one of the most like basically like a socialist, like left wing people of all time, and we actually watched that whole movie start to finish for the class, and like I don't really know what she was trying to educate us about. She was like, because I guess the film, as horrible as it is a technical feat because it's a silent film from like 1911 and it's 3 hours long.
But it's
And
really
it's
well
directed
made,
like
and
it's directed like a well-made movie. So I guess there's the technical aspect, but this class was about history of film. So I guess she was just trying to show us how racist Hollywood was, or like, but we literally sat start to finish and watched the whole movie. And it's like, if I could pay $40,000 a year in tuition to basically be unwillingly shown one of the most racist films of all time for quote unquote educational purposes, why can't I watch that episode of The fucking Office?
Yeah, exactly. And that's not even the episode of The Office Community. It's not racist. I mean, there was like I watched this movie called The Searchers with John Wayne, and it's a classic Western. And the movie is really fucking racist the way it portrays Native Americans as like these savages.
I
And
mean, John
as
Wayne.
far as John
Yeah,
Wayne, well, as
pretty
far
much
as
anything
John Wayne,
Wayne.
well, John Wayne was a racist, and so
Yeah.
it's like, and watch that movie, and but also the movie itself is like not that great, and it's like the acting is pretty terrible. But there are people who still love the movies like that. I mean, there are people, there are movies that are like I said, like Breakfast at Tiffany's is extremely racist. It's still a great movie. You can have multiple thoughts. Not everything has to be like completely woke and like like
I mean, you can also attempt to appreciate art that came from imperfect times. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
obviously, the excuse of something being from a different time doesn't make it morally justified. But I mean, it does kind of explain why it is the way it is. Like, that's why it is that way. Like, people thought differently back then. It was wrong.
Dude,
But
there was
like, that's just the way people were. Like, and it's fucked up. But I mean, like, we can't erase that history because then
can't.
what we're left with is a giant lie. Like, think about it.
Brave
Like,
New World. It's like that was the world, and it's like look. I was watching a Casablanca.
let me just give one example of one thing that's like I don't think you could like. There's a movie called Das Boot, and it's a German submarine movie, and it takes place in World War II, and it's from the German perspective. So the main characters are technically Nazis, but it was made during a time when it was like it was the 80s, so like the swastika was like I think by then illegal to show in Germany, so there's not really like swastikas in the movie, but like it's not about them being Nazis. It's not about them hating Jews and rounding up Jews. It's just about the lives of soldiers who actually have the people who actually had to fight the war from submarines, like fighting battles underwater and descending to the bottom of the ocean, not knowing if you're gonna rise again. And like, yeah, the main characters are not like technically they're Nazis, but it's like that's not what the film is about. So there's no reason you should be able to not watch. You should not be able to watch the movie. It's like the film is not the film is not even in favor of the Nazis. The movie ends with all of them dying. Spoiler alert. But it's like, why? You have to think about like if we're really gonna just set up this gridlock criteria of like this is what's okay, like this is how it's okay to make a film about something, and this is how it's not okay. You're basically destroying the integrity of art on pretty much all.
Oh yeah,
levels.
you are, and it's also like, no, I agree, and because with Das Boot, the example is that it's like you're getting an audience to relate to these soldiers and saying that even though you guys fight for different causes, well, some of your causes that these people fight for are evil, you're still human beings with similar emotions, and you're all afraid of dying, and you have all these. It's bringing about similarities between vastly different people. That's the human experience, and it's saying that the human experience is universal, no matter who it is, and that's art right there, is being able to show that. I mean, I was watching
right there, motherfucker.
That's art right there. I mean, I was watching Casablanca, and at one point in the movie, there's like a black guy who plays the piano, and the main woman says like, "Oh, is that your boy?" Because she refers to him as a boy, and you watch it like, "Oh shit!" And then like that's it really. I mean, but it's like, listen, that that's still a great movie. That's just the way that people talk back then. I mean, like, yeah, it was really fucked up and racist, but like it was also 1942, and it's just that's just the way things were. People act like you weren't. People like to act so like morally self-righteous, and we're mostly talking about woke white people. It's like we were saying this before. Like, dude, if you were alive back in the 17 or 1800s, you might have owned slaves. that might have just been the reality of it. Like,
I
that's
mean,
just the way things are.
people also forget that like slaves that were taken to America were also taken from they were taken from slave owners who owned them in Africa already. Like it's not like like slavery is something that is like, yes, it's a horrible evil thing that should never happen again. But it was commonplace until like 200 years ago when we like essentially banned. We were like one of the last ones, which is fucked up. But like it's hard to explain because you watch a movie like I just watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and there's not really any black characters in the movie except for like a couple of dudes in the background who are like carrying their bags and shit.
1939 it came out.
Like, it was literally it was the fucking 30s. It's like,
what do you
are you gonna blame them for making a movie about the world that they saw? Like, yes, it was a wrong world, but like I can't believe like more people are like dumbfounded by the idea that not everybody is a fucking right thinking freedom fighter. Like some of those people were just living lives in a time period that they had to adapt to, which sucks. Exactly. But that's the nature of human beings. You adapt to your surroundings, and your surroundings are not always morally beneficial. But also, it's like your evolutionary nature to adapt to those. Unfortunately, that's the way it is.
I mean, you can make a movie that is as if you like. Let me tell you this to all like the really woke people out there right now. If you're like an aspiring filmmaker, go make the most woke film you could possibly imagine. The most woke, progressive-minded, liberal film you could possibly imagine, with all women and all people of color, and it's like white people are the devils and blah blah blah. And I guarantee you, in 50 or so years from now, people are still going to look at that and be like, wow, I can't believe people thought like that. It's very regressive and backwards.
Absolutely.
It's always going to, everything's evolving. And people are going to look at you and the way you live your life in the future and be like, how the fuck did people do this? How the fuck did people live that way?
Of course. I can see people in the future, people watching a movie like that, like a woke movie from the 2020s in like 2050, and just being like, how do the straight white people think it's okay to dye their hair? Don't they know that's appropriating gay culture? Like, I can totally see
it's always going to be evolving. We should make we should do the opposite of what.
And also, people are always ready to naysay. Like, people are, even if someone worked as hard as they can to really make something that seems to be in line with the quote unquote right side of history, there'll always be somebody who's like, actually, no. You had 7 female actresses, but you didn't have any trans ones, and you were supposed to have 8. So yeah, you missed the mark here. This is one of the most problematic. It's like, this movie is about like trans rights. It's literally a film about trans rights. It's like, sorry, you only had 1 trans character though. You need at least 15. And there's not enough women talking about stuff that has nothing to do with men. It's like, but the main character identifies as a man. It's like, yeah, but it still doesn't pass the test. They have to not be talking about men. You see what I'm saying? This is why you're not. By the way, I found that test. I found it's basically, there's 3 criteria.
Okay, what are they?
It's called the Bechdel-Wallace test.
I've heard of that, actually.
It is a test which names the following 3 criteria. The film has to have at least 2 women in it who talk to each other about something besides a man. So that's the whole point. The movie just has to be a film about women talking about stuff that has nothing to do with men, which is like, yeah, movies like that exist, but like, if you want more good ones, you got to make them. Don't make me stop watching all the old good movies that are not about women just because there's not enough pussy in them for you. It's like,
some old movies are really progressive too. Like, I was before you get to the other rules, like for one of my old time favorite movies is Some Like It Hot, and the movie is that these 2 men played by Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon have to dress up as women because they're wanted by the mafia, and they end up joining this female band, and throughout the movie they get like sexually harassed by all these creepy dudes, and these 2 guys learn about like the female experience and what it's like to have to deal with like really creepy fucking guys all the time. And it's like, that came out in 1959, and that's like a very, I think, like progressive message for then. and I'm sure that somebody will have a problem with it for some bullshit reason. It's just like it can never be enough.
There's one show from like the 50s or so. I could never think of the name, but like, you know, my dad had it on one day, and it's basically just a show. Like, it's about this dude who's like a cowboy who like protects this small town. And there's one episode there
or
where there's
something.
like where there's I don't even know, but there's one episode where there's like a pretty stereotypical Asian family, like just a dude and his son, and they just I mean, they are like, here's the thing, like the character is like very stereotypically Asian, like straight up like samurai, like with like a ponytail and like the pointy mustache and everything, and like he lives in a really stereotypical Asian way, like in the woods or something, like with fucking shit all over. But like the episode is really about how the people of the town are, you know, they're actually racist towards him because he's Asian, and the main character like saves him from like racist people who are trying to attack him. And like, you know, like the point of like, even the thing is, it was the 50s, so obviously it wasn't done right. They still had no idea how to accurately depict an Asian person.
But they agree with you. The whole point is they're agreeing with you.
They agree with you. Like, they weren't there yet, but they were trying. Like, nobody gives the credit to the fact that they were at least trying to make.
Why do you have this? What is this liberal inclination? This is why liberals and conservatives like are different. Why do liberals feel the need to put others down that agree with them, that are on your side? You have enough people that disagree with you. Why are you trying to make enemies out of the people that are trying to agree with you and trying to help you? Like, it's so stupid. Anyway, what are the other rules of
I mean, that's really just like it's just those main 3 rules. Like, I'm sure it gets more complicated, but like,
we should make another movie that's like the opposite of that. We should make a movie that's like that has no female characters, that just has a bunch of men around.
Yeah, right. Like, we should make a test for men. Like, the movie must contain absolutely no women unless they're showing bare tits. That's the man movie test. The movie must contain no females unless they're openly exposing their vaginas to the camera directly.
I'll just try to make the most regressive movie ever made. Just
the white power movie test.
White power, the Ben Shapiro test of movies.
Must contain non-white characters played by white actors.
Or so, like, okay, what about a movie like I was talking about this before, like, so for instance, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Everybody talks about how the ending is really transphobic because, you know, he finds out that he kissed a man, or the woman that used to be a man, or whatever, and he gets like really grossed out that he throws up and he like brushes his teeth and does all this shit. And it's like, I wonder if this will still be funny watching this. So I watched this scene yesterday, and I gotta say, it was still really fucking funny. It's mainly because it's Jim Carrey's acting. He's just so over the top. He literally takes a plunger and starts plunging his face, and it's just funny. And politically incorrect stuff is funny. Sorry,
it's also funny too because the fact that it's not politically correct makes a subtle point that I think probably people who criticize that movie don't realize. Like, the reason Ace is grossed out in that scene is not because, oh my God, homosexuality, it's disgusting. Here's the thing. It's because if he knew that Einhorn technically has male genitalia, he would not have consented to the kiss.
Yeah.
So he's grossed out by the fact that he was essentially sexually assaulted. Like,
he was
so the film still agrees with you. You're just too dumb to fucking read between the lines. Like, the film still agrees with you. He's not grossed out because ew, gay. He's grossed out because fuck, I kissed this person who I would not have kissed had I known everything about them. That's the joke. Like, and that joke fully 100% agrees with you, you fucking idiots.
It's like this woman misled him to doing that. And it's just the fact that, listen, at the end of the day, there's this new bullshit imaginary rule that was mainly created by journalists, which is saying, like, you should never punch down, you should always punch up. To be honest, though, most of the time, I think that comedy punches down is funnier than comedy that punches up. And it's mainly because, like, comedy that punches up often just feels like I'm being lectured to. It feels like I'm in a college class. And I get there is funny comedy that punches down, But like sometimes like the point of it is that it's not politically correct and that it's mean and offensive, and that's kind of what makes it funny. And I'm sorry, it's not.
Jack's like, look, sometimes the point of the comedy is that it is racist, okay? Deal with it.
No, I'm saying that sometimes like offensive, mean-spirited comedy is just funny, and there's nothing really you can do. And I'm not saying that yes, racism is wrong and it's not funny, but like certain things that are like like South Park is very politically incorrect. But a lot of the reason why it's funny is because it's not politically. It's pushing boundaries. It's making you laugh at things that you're not supposed to laugh at. Comedians that our favorite comedians laugh about things like abortion and death and AIDS and all these different things that are really serious topics, but if you're able to make jokes about it, it's mean, and but at the same time it's just funny and there's really nothing you can do about it.
Well, it's also not just that it's offensive. It's not just the offensiveness that makes it funny. It's
Yeah, true,
also
because
just
it's
the
like
fact,
certain things that are just offensive for no reason.
but it's
That's
really
just
just
lame.
it's
Yeah.
also just the fact that comedy that is not politically correct allows you to look at things in a way in a different contextual light to where you might see a point about something that you hadn't considered before. Sometimes fully understanding the depth of a subject requires straying from the decided line of the norm. Like, yeah, we all have an accepted way of thinking about things, but sometimes it actually is essential to not even to just stray away from that path, but to go directly against it to see the truth about what's being, the message is being sent. Like, I think, for example, about the one South Park episode where the Native Americans come and they try to build a casino and they try to build a superhighway to destroy South Park. And like people will argue that they might have depicted Native Americans in a racist light, but that episode is a satire because essentially the Native Americans are doing to them what white people did to the Native Americans when
Yeah, it's making a point.
colonized this continent. It's making a point about how white people they'll band together and be like, you can't build these casinos in our towns or to our towns. It's like, yeah, but your town is sitting on stolen land, idiot. Like,
yeah, exactly.
but
Well,
it's
that's
that
also like
you needed that sort of offensive, somewhat uncomfortable take on it to really see that point, because you couldn't really make an episode like that in a politically correct way. There's too many pitfalls.
woke. I think the problem is that woke people don't appreciate like subtlety or nuance to things in a way that makes you and yes, like I'm not saying that like just saying racist shit is funny, like, because if you're just being offensive for the point of being offensive, that's not funny, you're just an asshole. But if there is a greater point to it, then and that it is funny, I'm gonna laugh. And I'm not gonna be like, you shouldn't make fun of that because that's like a really like, you know what it is? It becomes like these people that act like this sanctimonious way of like you shouldn't joke around about it. The problem with these people is that they're just buzzkills. They're just not fun to be around. I know people like this. I have a couple of relatives like this, and whenever they come to visit, I'm literally counting the seconds until they leave because they're just
there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than like trying to riff with your like woke crowd. Like when you're with woke
that's
friends,
awful.
like riffing is impossible. It's like you'll just be like you don't even know what to say. Like what about how do you start a riff? It's like, hey man, can you believe all this cultural appropriation going on? Am I right?
You feel like you have to walk on eggshells.
They just
There's nothing.
They're just like rolling. Like you can literally say any topic. You could just be like, and I for one am in favor of funding Planned Parenthood, and they're just like crying on the floor. They're like, ah!
Yeah. As long as you agree with me, it's funny because we agree on the same thing.
and also, gentrification is bad.
This guy's saying my opinions on stage. Wow, what a comedian. I mean, have you ever been at a party and like you're all just hanging out with people and like you're just like joking around and there's just one person who's like, that's not appropriate to. It's like, dude, like fucking drop dead, man. Why are you here?
I mean,
why do you have to ruin everybody's good time? It's just,
I'll give an example of something that happened to me. I was in the city with some people and like I went to a show. I went to a show to support a friend. And me and like a couple and everyone, we were like in the subways on the way back. And I saw this dude across the subways who like the dude just like, I mean, he was very clearly and obviously under the influence of something. Like he was just stumbling around, like yelling shit, like, like waving his arms and shit. So I like just whispered to one of the kids who I kind of knew, and I was like, holy fuck, like that dude's on crack or something. And he just like looked at me and he was just like, well, how do you know that he's on crack? And I'm like, well, I mean, like I'm just, it's just a joke, dude. Look at the guy.
Like why do you have to like fucking?
He's screaming and fucking waving his arms, and he's like, he's about to fucking dive onto the tracks. It's like I'm just making a funny inference. It's like, well, a lot of people can have a mental issue. It's like, dude,
I would have pushed him in front of the subway. I would have pushed him in front of the train if he did that.
I should have done that. As soon as he said that, I should have just grabbed him by the neck and threw him onto the tracks. Just like, yeah, here you go. Like, the fucking train just come. He just the last thing he sees is just blaring headlights in front of his face before he just gets rammed. It's like
run over.
it's like, dude, okay, fine. Maybe I don't know everything about that guy's life, but it's like
joking.
If you see a sort of scary individual who seems to be behaving threatening, one way to ease the tension is to make a joke about it. And all I said was like, he looks like he's cracked out. And all of a sudden, I was like, not factoring in his potential PTSD, or like, I don't know what the fuck. How do you please these people?
You can't, dude. I was like, and the problem with these people is and to be fair, I haven't met all. I'm sure there are people that are like cool and fun to hang out with like this. But, like I was with my friends. He invited me to watch the Golden Globes at this kid's house, and like I was like, all right, sure. And so I go there, and he met me outside before. And he's like, all right, by the way, just so you know, all these people are like really, really politically correct. And I'm like, okay. Like he said it so serious the way he was saying that. And I'm like,
he basically he takes you aside and he's just like, Jack, look, I just need to give you the rundown so you don't embarrass me.
Well, no, he was like, he's not like that, but he was like, just so you know, like, and I'm like, that's, whatever. It sounds fine. Whatever. Who gives a shit? And then, so I'm like, I'm a liberal guy myself, but I go in there, and it's just like they're like very standoffish and snide and mean. And like one celebrity went on stage, and he was like everybody was having a good time. I think it was like Pierce Brosnan, and he was going on. He's like, you guys have to remember all of the suffering that's going on in the Middle East. And I just said in the middle, I'm like, yeah, but who really gives a shit about those people? Just as a joke. And like it was obviously just like a very tongue-in-cheek joke. Just because it's like, let's just lighten the mood. Like, we're all just trying to have fun. And like Pierce Brosnan is being a total buzzkill. And like this guy gave me this very serious look. He's like, that's really offensive. And you shouldn't. I'm like, fuck you. And I swear to God, like 10 minutes later, I'm like, I'm out of here. You guys are the worst people I've ever met in my life.
It's just like, I'm not leaving because I hate you guys, but that is exactly why I'm leaving.
Yeah, I'm like, I really fucking hate you guys. And I texted my friend, I'm like, I hate these kids. And he's like, yeah, I do too, but he's
like, yeah, I do too, but I'm kind of trying to fuck that one chick, so it's like,
that one chick with the purple hair, she's pretty hot, big titties.
Dudes will sell out their core beliefs for pussy. It's crazy.
Yeah,
like I've met guys who are straight up just like, like they could literally be completely like I'm not even saying this is good, but there's dudes who could be like, bro, fuck abortion. If you get abortion, you're a bad girl, like a bad person. It's murder. And then they like meet a chick and they start banging. Next week, they're like, yeah, so I donated to Planned Parenthood and I'll be going to the fundraiser next week.
Well, you're referring to our simps. We're referring to...
but really, it's just dudes. Like dudes, there's no one is more fake than a dude trying to get laid. Like that's the fakest type of individual. Like just a guy who's trying to doll himself up to maybe be attractive to some woman, to not just on a physical level, but in like a personal way, so that he can seem like progressive. And he's just like, yeah, I was marching with the protesters and I donated to Black Visions Collective. And she's just like
all these I feel like all these call-out culture people are... Sorry, what were you saying?
I was gonna say she's just like standing there listening to him, like, wow, he's really progressive, but I totally would never fuck him.
Yeah, this guy's a total fucking weenie. And
Yeah, he's a weeb. Like I agree with his ideals, but he's a complete weeb. I would never have sex with this dude.
well, like I feel like a lot of those call out culture people, it doesn't like it. They these people that like to go on Twitter and be like, this guy is a piece of shit. This guy is a piece of shit. This guy is a piece of shit. They're not doing it because they like really believe it's like the right thing to do, and these people are evil and they need to be expunged from society. What I think they're really trying to do is they're trying to hopefully some woman will be like, oh wow, this guy agrees with me. You're gonna fuck. I'm gonna fuck him. Which in a way is pretty sexist because you think like women are so dumb that they just think like, oh my god, you agree with me. Like, have my vagina, like that's not how it works. That's so backwards.
You support equal rights and you watch movies that pass the Bechdel test? Please fuck me.
Yeah, I hope that there's some. Yeah, women.
You
just
mean to
think
tell
like
me that you donated? You mean to tell me that you donated to the Minnesota Freedom Fund?
Have my vagina. Yeah, those people are fucking.
How many marches have you gone to?
No, women, and I'm not speaking for all women. Women like a guy that like, and I'm not speaking for all women here, but
yeah, some women are whores. I'm not speaking for all of them.
But from my experience, there are a lot of women that like a guy who will like argue with them just because it's like because there are so many guys that she's met because she's hot that will just arbitrarily agree with whatever she says. So when she finds a guy that's like, I don't agree with that, it's in a way it's attractive because it's like this guy is not like putting me on a pedestal. He's seeing me as an own that he can have. Like, if you have a friend, if you have a dude friend, right, you're not going to be like, I'm just going to agree with whatever Tom says. You're going to, argue back and forth. And so,
nobody would ever say that about me in any circumstance ever.
Well, yeah, true. You're trying to like, you're putting this person on equal level.
Women are not, this is a little segment we like to call dating advice with a podcast orange. But
that is a weekly segment, us.
Yeah, right. But I don't know. From my experience, yeah, women are not looking for somebody who's going to agree with everything they say. They're looking for somebody who's going to respect them as a human being. And part of that is being willing and having the courage to disagree with a person on something. And all these fucking woke retards and like fucking Williamsburg who think they're gonna get laid by fucking putting the black square on their Instagram.
The fedora. I did too, but it's not because I'm trying to get laid. I legitimately agree with that.
I know I'm not getting laid no matter what I do, so I was actually doing that for the cause, bitch. But I think it's like a lot of it is also like, at least in the sense of comedians, I think of a lot of it is some of them think it's going to get them ahead in the industry. Like some of them think like, oh, if I voice all these concerns about social justice issues on social media now, a booker will like, when they're considering me for a show, they'll see that my social media is pristine and they'll see that I'm this like progressive comic and they'll want to put me on because they,
I think that funny. Are you funny?
Yeah, like, are you actually good? Is that
like whatever happened to that?
Remember that really important question you have to ask yourself when you're doing stand-up? Am I actually good at all? Remember that?
Am I actually funny? Do I make people like that comedian that made that racist list of whatever the racist comedian? Like I watched some of his stand-up because I'm like, all right, is this guy like? Let me see what this guy's all about. And I came in there honestly with an open mind. I'm like, if this guy's funny, he's funny. Fuck it. And it was like really not funny at all. It was really bad fucking humor. And this dude's been doing comedy for like 10 years and he fucking sucks. And I'm like, this guy sucks.
These people get into stand-up thinking that it's like a freedom fighter project. Like they think the job of a comedian is to expose the wrongdoings of society and act as the modern world's muckrakers. It's like you realize what you are as a clown without makeup, right?
You're a court jester.
You're like people. I remember, like people will fucking be like, it's the job of a comedian to shed light on the darkness of the world, when it's literally just like a guy who smoked way too much weed in college and decided that he wanted to make jokes for people. Like that's all you are. You're not a fucking freedom fighter. You're not a revolutionary. You're not even that progressive. You're just a fucking stoner who watches too much Rick and Morty and eats Cheerios for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and decided that maybe you're talented enough to be listed with the greats like Carlin and Pryor, but you're
Well, also,
not.
like Carlin, like people like, yeah, like you could say like the greats like Carlin, Pryor, they were like philosophers in a way. They had these really
I mean,
beliefs that
even
were like
so,
different.
I wouldn't even care about George Carlin's beliefs if he wasn't funny at all.
Oh
Like
yeah, because
part of
then he
what
would
makes
just be
me
Bill Hicks and not funny. Yeah, Bill Hicks wasn't funny. Suck on that, motherfuckers. I know that
I
people are
would
gonna get angry at me for saying that.
I would
I don't
like to voice my disagreement with Jack here. I enjoy Bill Hicks, but anyway, no, but it's true. Like, yeah, Bill Hicks is definitely less funny because he tried to take that route a little too seriously. Like when he was making jokes, his jokes were actually good. But yeah, when he was preaching, it's not like nobody goes to a comedy show because they want you to preach. And if you're gonna
know.
make topical jokes, they have to be extra funny. Otherwise, it's still just preaching. It's just
It's just
clever preaching.
commentary, and you're just talking down to people. And it's like, you can be that way, but all these woke people that think they're like revolutionary, nothing you're saying hasn't been said a million times before by like freshman sociology majors at a liberal arts university. You're just towing the line. You're just saying the same shit. The only difference is you have a microphone and you're standing on a platform. There's nothing interesting or revolutionary about your ideas whatsoever. So if you want to say something different, say something fucking different. Don't just say, yeah, racism is really bad. Everybody knows that. You're not being, yeah, we need to give more opportunities to
Even
women.
like
Like,
things like
yeah, no shit. Like, when nobody's, it just, you're just saying obvious bullshit that like everyone wants to be like, yeah, good job, okay.
and also,
But, like,
you have to think about the value of what the work you're doing is. Like, as far as like call out culture, like, do you have to think, does it really serve ethnic communities to work extra hard to get semi-racist cartoons taken off TV? Like,
yeah,
no, like, how about, like, what would support those communities if you actually went there and supported their fucking businesses? How about that?
yeah,
How about
exactly.
instead of fucking spurging out on Twitter, you fucking go and actually support black businesses if you're fucking so supportive of Black Lives Matter that you're ready to fucking cancel Jimmy Fallon over blackface from
Kimmel and
2000. Like, what name one black person that actually helps? Like, it
or name
doesn't.
one
Like,
black
these
person that
people are doing
really gave a shit about that at all.
like these people are doing it for themselves. It's all about them. Like, that's what kills me about it is
Oh
that
yeah.
they think they're doing it for the greater good. They're like all the like even the statues. Like, I get it. If you have statues of people from the Confederacy, yeah, those are basically Nazi statues
Yeah,
to me.
those people are pieces of shit. But
Those are
like
Nazi
George
statues. They should
Washington,
take them
for
down.
instance, the reason we have presidents and not kings is because of George Washington. Because at the end of at the end of 8 years of being president, they asked George Washington. They say, "Hey, would you like to have this position for life?" And George Washington said, "Fuck no! I didn't just fight a war against these goddamn limey Brits and start our own country so that we can get back to having kings and queens. We need to change it up every 8 years." And that's why we have a democracy today. So, yes, okay, at the end of the day, George Washington owned slaves. It was wrong, it was horrible, it was really fucked up, it was evil. Nobody is denying that. But like that was way things were. And you need to look at the fact that there were good things that happened as a result of him and other people like him. And
Like, the point of a statue is to honor the good things that very important people for our culture have done for our society. And George Washington, whether he owned slaves or not, is one of the most important figures in American history. And America would not be the same without him. Like, Confederate soldiers and generals, yeah, they pretty much did almost no good. So the fact that they did almost no good is the reason why they're being taken down, because basically 0% of what they did was good. But like, you have George Washington, like, without that, yeah. Or also just like when they're talking about changing Jesus, they're like, take down all the statues of white Jesus and may turn it into black Jesus. It's like, fine. Ask yourself a question about Jesus. He grew up in thousands of years ago. What do you think he would have done if he saw two dudes making out? You think he would have just been fine with it? Probably not. He probably would have threw rocks at them with everyone else.
Yeah,
Why does
you have
his
to look at
statue get to stay up?
everybody acts like that everything has to be completely sanitized in the way it is. I know it may sound like I'm undermining slavery, and it's not. It's the worst thing ever, and I'll never know what it's like to have ancestors that were slaves, except for the fact that the Jews were slaves millions of years ago. But the black people were slaves more recently, and it was awful. And we all know that. Yeah, but it's just like you have to look at like that was the culture of how things were. And also, I would like to add that these woke people, if we're going to talk about like racist shit, all these fucking woke hipsters moved into Brooklyn and kicked all of these black people out of their homes to gentrify New York City.
Yeah,
And
that's the worst part. Like these
that's
people
so
think they're so
racist.
helpful. They think they're so helpful to fucking Black Lives Matter and to stopping systemic racism. You're part of it. You
Yeah.
contributed to systemic racism the second you fucking had your parents fucking front you like $5,000 for the first like 4 months rent of a shitty apartment in Brooklyn, so you could prance around and go to all the chains and then fucking pursue your acting dream while you continuously drain the fucking community of its resources and its fucking culture. Literally forcing those people, like literally forcing like black people and people of other ethnicities out of out of their neighborhoods, out of the neighborhoods they've lived in for generations, all because youth wanted to move to New York and become famous.
Yeah,
and
you
sit in
trust
coffee
fund
shops with your
cunts.
Mac. You
And then they
trust
get to
fund
act
cunts
like,
sitting sitting in a fucking coffee shop with your Mac, typing up your shitty ass screenplay, acting
it's
like
gonna be
you're a
very
fucking
progressive screenplay, and it's gonna have all different types of, and we're gonna cast all black people in it, and blah 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 blah. That's why one of my favorite satires of all time was Get Out, because that movie really at its very core was making fun of those people, that the people that think they're like really really super progressive, but at the very were just as bad and shitty as the rest, if not worse. And
yeah.
and that's kind of like one of the reasons I love that movie so much.
Like
Um,
I was talking to my friend the other day who is black. He was literally saying to me, he's like, these people talk about Black Lives Matter and then they push Black lives out of the way to live here.
mhm.
It's like that's exactly what it is. Like you fucking post Black Lives Matter and then you shove black people out of your way so that you and your fucking friends from college can move in and have a shitty wine and cheese party on your first night. Like fuck you guys, honestly.
And they don't post it because they genuinely believe it and they want to make a difference for Black Lives Matter. They post Black Lives Matter because it's trendy and it'll get them likes on their Instagram account. That's all it is. It's a fucking trend, and it's
It's a
all about
front.
being hip and being with it and current and with the times. It's a fucking click, and these people are just garbage.
Yep. At this point, we may we may be beating around the bush. I mean, we may be beating a dead horse here.
Yeah, I think we
But
made our point here.
yeah, I think we've gotten I think we've gotten our stance out pretty firmly about this subject.
Well, how do we feel about woke people though? I don't think we've talked about that.
Oh god. I mean, one thing I'll say is like, you know, I'm not saying that people shouldn't call things out when it's genuinely wrong,
Yeah,
but
of course.
you have to be like, I just think that like it shouldn't be such a knee jerk reaction. Like it should be something that's nuanced. It should be something that actually takes a lot of thought. Like
Mhm.
if you're gonna call somebody out for something you think is truly immoral, you have to have a strong argument. You can't just go based on like a list of like criteria that's not being met. Because like if you want to go by the fucking like the fucking Bechdel test, like some of the most important like cultural movies in American history are not gonna pass.
No,
Like
Citizen
even
Kane, The Godfather, like that.
even
The Godfather had like one woman in the whole movie. It's like,
even a movie like the Itty Bitty Titty Committee, which is about feminism. Like most of the movie is them talking about how much they hate men. Still, like it's still about like it still doesn't pass the fucking test. Like,
no, it's like, dude, no movie will ever reach these standards because I think is one, they have this desire to be offended because it makes them feel good about themselves. And also I think there's an element of call out culture and trying to destroy people that's rooted in sadism, and some people get an enjoyment from seeing people fall from grace. And I think one reason is they're sort of jealous of some people's success and their lack of success, and so they're like, well, if I can't be successful, you can't either, and they want to see these people fall.
I mean,
And
yeah, some people their question is like, how come I'm not great? How come how come I can't be great when so and so who's a racist, like they just decide and they're
yeah,
like they're a
exactly,
racist,
and it's like,
they get all
who
the
decides
power,
these
but I don't get
standards
it.
too? Like, who
It's
decides these standards, man? You
we
make
could
these
go on.
standards, but it's like,
We really could go on and on. Bottom line is, Podcast Orange is now a fully blackface podcast. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm totally fully kidding. But I think that might be all we have to say. We've been at this. You have anything else to add, Jack? Close this out.
Probably gonna masturbate when this is over. Just to let you guys know that. I don't know though.
Me too.
Me too. Hashtag me too. Uh,
Hashtag
hashtag me
it
for.
should just be a hashtag me number for like just signaling when you're gonna masturbate. But
Yeah.
they skip me too, obviously, because that one's taken. So it just goes from me 1 to me 3.
3.
But Jack off. Hashtag me 1. Hashtag me 3.
Before I end, I just want to say, like, the one thing about the Bechdel test is that it's like these people decide here's our standards for what everything needs to be, but it's like, well, why does that the official you're just deciding this is like the official thing that it's not real. It's not a real thing. It's just a made up thing that somebody stupid.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Now
Go watch old movies.
The point of this episode of a podcast Orange is that Jack and I are incels. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for listening to
Thank you guys. Yeah.
a podcast incel. We'll be back next week as always. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Have a good night.
Bye.
Say your last words, Jack.
Goodbye. I'll see you next week. I don't know. That's it.